Now that Daddy's gone, it's time we talked about what's really fair. My daughter Kendra sat across from me in my late husband's office, her arms crossed tight over her chest. Her husband Terrence leaned back in the leather chair that Leonard had saved 3 months to buy when we first started Thornton & Sons construction 40 years ago. That man had the nerve to put his feet up on my husband's desk. We'd buried Lenny just 6 days before. "Fair?" I said. My voice came out steady, even though my hands were shaking in my lap. I pressed them together, feeling the wedding band I wasn't ready to take off. "Baby, what are you talking about?" Kendra rolled her eyes like I was the one being difficult. "Mama, don't play. You're 61 years old. You can't run this company by yourself. Terrence has his MBA. He knows business. We should take over before you run everything Daddy built into the ground." I looked at my daughter, my only child, the girl I'd raised, the baby I'd rocked through countless nights, and I barely recognized her. When did she become this person? Or had she always been this way, and I just loved her too much to see it? "Your father and I built this company together," I said quietly. "I was there from the first day. I did the books. I negotiated contracts. You did secretary work," Terrence interrupted, dropping his feet to the floor with a thud that made me flinch. "No offense, Ma, but typing up invoices isn't the same as running a multi-million-dollar operation. This is a big boy business now. You need to step aside and let people who understand modern corporate structure take the reins." The disrespect dripped from every word. This man had been in my family for 10 years, ate at my table every Sunday after church, let me raise his children while he and Kendra went on vacations. And now he sat in my husband's chair telling me I was too old and too dumb to run my own company. "Where are Aaliyah and Zion?" I asked, looking at Kendra. "I haven't seen my grandbabies since the funeral." "They're with Terrence's mother," Kendra said, waving her hand like this wasn't important. We needed to have this conversation without distractions. Without distractions. My 8-year-old granddaughter, who cried in my arms at her grandfather's graveside, was a distraction now. I stood up from my chair and walked to the window. From the 3rd floor of our building, I could see the construction site 3 blocks down, where we were building a new community center. Leonard had bid on that project 8 months ago, right before his heart attack. It was going to be his legacy. A place for kids in our neighborhood to go after school, stay out of trouble, learn trades. Now I'd have to finish it without him. "I know you're grieving, Mama," Kendra said, her voice softening just a little. "We all are. But grief makes people confused. You're not thinking straight. Sign the papers, transfer majority ownership to me and Terrence, and you can still collect a salary. You can rest, travel, enjoy your retirement. Isn't that what you and Daddy always talked about?" She was right about one thing. Leonard and I had talked about traveling. We had a whole list, places we wanted to see, things we wanted to do once we slowed down. New Orleans for the Jazz Festival. The Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in D.C. that we'd never made time to visit. Maybe even Africa, trace our roots like we'd always dreamed. But we never got the chance. Leonard worked himself to death building something he thought would take care of our family for generations. And now, not even a week in the ground, his daughter wanted to hand it over to a man who'd never swung a hammer in his life. Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. "No," I said, turning back to face them. "No?" Terrence laughed. "Ma, this wasn't really a question. Kendra is your only heir. The company's going to her eventually anyway. We're just trying to make the transition smooth." I said no. My voice was stronger this time. This company stays in my name. I'm not going anywhere. Kendra's face changed then. The fake sweetness dropped away, and I saw something cold underneath. Something that scared me because I'd never seen it before, not in my baby girl. "Then we'll make you," she said quietly. "Terrence has already talked to a lawyer. You're a grieving widow. You're not in your right mind. We can have you declared incompetent." The words hit me like a slap. My own daughter was threatening to have me declared incompetent so she could steal my company. "You need to leave," I said. "Both of you, right now." "We're not leaving until you sign these papers." Terrence pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the desk. "We've been patient, Ma. We waited until after the funeral out of respect. But it's time to be realistic. You're an old woman who never even finished college." "You can't— Get out!" My voice cracked like thunder. I barely recognized it as my own. "Get out of my office, out of my building, before I call security." Terrence stood up slowly, straightening his expensive suit. "You're making a mistake. We're trying to help you." Help me? I could feel tears burning in my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall. Not in front of these two. "My husband isn't even cold in his grave, and you're circling like vultures. What kind of help is that?" Kendra stood too, grabbing her purse. "Fine. We tried to do this the easy way, but don't come crying to us when you lose everything because you're too stubborn to accept help." She headed for the door, then turned back. "And don't expect to see Aaliyah and Zion anytime soon. I don't want them around someone who's clearly having a mental breakdown." That threat, keeping my grandbabies from me, hurt worse than anything else she could have said. Those children were Leonard's legacy, his joy. He'd taught Aaliyah how to read blueprints, let little Zion wear a tiny hard hat on site visits. They loved their papa more than anything. And now Kendra was going to use them as weapons. After they left, I locked the office door and finally let myself cry. Big, ugly sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for Leonard, for the future we'd lost. I cried for the daughter I thought I'd raised, wondering where I'd gone wrong. I cried until there were no tears left, until I was empty. Then I walked to Leonard's desk, my desk now, and sat down in his chair. It still smelled like his cologne, that same scent he'd worn since we were young. I let myself breathe it in, let myself remember. We'd met at church when I was 19 and he was 21. He was the finest man I'd ever seen, with hands that could build anything and a smile that made my knees weak. We got married 3 months later, and everybody said we were too young, too rushed, that it wouldn't last. We showed them. Leonard started working construction to pay our bills while I worked 2 jobs, secretary during the day, cleaning offices at night. We saved every penny. When I got pregnant, we were so happy. We'd been trying for 2 years, and I'd almost given up hope. Then I lost the baby at 5 months. A little girl. We'd already picked out her name, Imani, Faith. Because we had faith she'd be our blessing. The grief nearly destroyed us. I fell into a depression so deep I couldn't get out of bed. Leonard would hold me at night while I cried, and I knew he was crying too, but he tried to be strong for me. A year later, I still wasn't pregnant. The doctors said the miscarriage had caused complications. It would be difficult, maybe impossible, for me to carry another baby to term. That's when we heard about Kendra. She was 2 days old, born to a 16-year-old girl at our church who couldn't keep her. The girl's mother brought her to our pastor, Sister Opal, begging for help finding a good home. Sister Opal thought of us immediately. I'll never forget the first time I held Kendra. She was so tiny, so perfect, with these big brown eyes that looked right into my soul. Leonard cried. I cried. We took her home that same day. We never formally adopted her. Couldn't afford the lawyer fees back then. But it didn't matter. She was ours. We raised her, loved her, gave her everything we had. When she was 5, we finally told her the truth, that she came to us in a special way, that her birth mother loved her enough to give her a better life. She'd seemed okay with it then. Said it didn't matter because we were her real parents anyway. But maybe it had mattered. Maybe more than I knew. I opened the bottom drawer of the desk, the one Leonard kept locked. I had the key on my chain now, along with all his other keys. Inside was a fireproof box with our important papers, deeds, insurance policies, business documents. And at the bottom, in a sealed envelope, the truth about Kendra's birth. I'd kept in touch with her birth mother over the years, sending photos, updates. The girl, Rochelle was her name, had gotten her life together. Finished school, went to college, became a social worker helping other young mothers. She'd never wanted to interfere, never wanted to confuse Kendra, but she'd always cared from a distance. 6 months ago, Rochelle had reached out. She was sick, lupus, and wanted to make sure her medical history was documented for Kendra's sake. She also wanted to finally meet her daughter, if Kendra was willing. I'd told Leonard we should arrange it, but he wanted to wait until after the community center project was done. He was always waiting for the right time, always one more project, one more deadline. Now he was gone, and there was no more time left. My phone buzzed. A text from Terrence. "You have 48 hours to reconsider. After that, we file the incompetency petition. Think about what's best for everyone, Ma." I stared at that message for a long time. 48 hours. 2 days before they tried to take everything Leonard and I had built. But as I sat there in his chair, surrounded by 40 years of memories and hard work, something shifted inside me. The grief was still there. It would always be there. But underneath it, I felt something else rising up. Anger. Pure, righteous anger. These people thought I was just some helpless old widow who'd fall apart without her husband. They thought I'd been playing secretary for 40 years while Leonard did all the real work. They had no idea what I was capable of. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. DeAndre Winters, the best attorney in the city and a man who'd started his career working as a summer intern for Thornton & Sons while he put himself through law school. "Mrs. Thornton," he answered on the first ring. "I'm so sorry about Mr. Leonard. I was out of town for the funeral, but I sent flowers." "I need your help, DeAndre," I interrupted. "My daughter and her husband are trying to take my company. They're threatening to have me declared incompetent." There was a pause. Then, "When can you come to my office?" "Tomorrow morning?" "I'll clear my schedule. And Mrs. Thornton, don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, and don't let them intimidate you. We're going to fight this." After we hung up, I felt steadier. I had an ally. I had a plan. I also had a secret that was going to change everything. Because if Kendra wanted to play hardball, if she wanted to threaten me and demand what she hadn't earned, then maybe it was time she learned the full truth about where she came from. And maybe it was time she learned what it really meant to build something from nothing, the way Leonard and I had done. My phone rang again. This time it was my neighbor, Yvette, calling to check on me. Sweet Yvette, who'd brought food after the funeral, who'd sat with me when I couldn't stand to be alone. "I'm okay," I told her. It was half true. "You don't sound okay, baby. Want me to come over?" I almost said yes. But then I looked at those papers on the desk, at Terrence's threats, at my daughter's betrayal, and I knew I needed to handle this myself. "Not tonight. But pray for me, Yvette. I've got a battle ahead." "Always, honey. Always." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet office as the sun set outside the window. Somewhere out there, Kendra and Terrence were probably celebrating, thinking they'd backed me into a corner. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I pulled out a piece of paper and started making a list. Everything I needed to do. Every move I needed to make. Leonard always said I was the strategic one, the one who could see 10 steps ahead while he was still thinking about step 2. Time to prove him right. My phone buzzed one more time. A photo from Kendra, Aaliyah and Zion, smiling with Terrence's mother. The caption read, "The kids are fine. They don't need the stress of being around you right now." I stared at my grandbabies' faces, feeling my heart crack. But underneath the pain, my resolve hardened into something unbreakable. "You want a war, baby girl?" I thought. "Then that's what you're going to get." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Kendra's cold smile, heard Terrence's disrespectful voice. By the time the sun came up, I was already dressed and sitting at my kitchen table with my coffee and my battle plan. My phone rang at 7:30. It was DeAndre's assistant, confirming my 9 o'clock appointment. I was grateful he'd moved so fast. I got to his office building downtown at 8:45. DeAndre met me in the lobby himself, gave me a long hug that reminded me he wasn't just my lawyer. He was someone Leonard and I had helped raise in a way. His own daddy had been gone, and Leonard had stepped in, taught him about hard work and integrity. "Come on up, Mrs. Thornton," he said gently, guiding me to the elevator. "Let's talk about what we're dealing with." His office was on the 15th floor, modern and sleek. Photos on the wall showed him with the mayor, with city council members, with judges. DeAndre had come a long way from that skinny kid in a hard hat we'd hired 20 years ago. "Tell me everything," he said once we were settled in his conference room. I did. Every word Kendra and Terrence had said, every threat they'd made. When I got to the part about them keeping my grandbabies from me, my voice broke. DeAndre's jaw was tight. "That's parental alienation, and it's cruel. But let's focus on the business threat first. Do you have copies of the company's founding documents? Leonard's will?" I brought everything. I pulled folders from my bag, papers I'd spent half the night organizing. "The will is clear. Everything goes to me, with provisions for Kendra after I pass. But while I'm alive, I have complete control." DeAndre reviewed the documents carefully. After a few minutes, he looked up with relief in his eyes. "Mrs. Thornton, their incompetency threat is empty. You'd need a medical evaluation showing cognitive decline, evidence that you can't manage your affairs. From where I'm sitting, you're sharp as ever. They're bluffing." "So I don't have to worry?" "I didn't say that." He leaned forward. "They could still file a frivolous petition, drag you through court, tie up the business in legal battles. Even if they lose, which they would, it could damage the company's reputation, scare off clients. Sometimes the fight itself is the weapon." I'd thought of that. Leonard and I had built Thornton & Sons on trust and reliability. Our contracts depended on people believing we were stable, solid. If word got out that the family was in a legal war over control, clients might take their business elsewhere. "What do I do?" I asked. "We go on offense," DeAndre said. "We make it clear that any legal action will be met with consequences. I'll draft a letter establishing your competency, your sole ownership, and warning that any harassment will result in a restraining order. We'll also document their threat to keep the children from you." It felt good to have a plan, but as we talked through details, I kept thinking about that envelope in Leonard's desk, the truth about Kendra's birth. Would it help my case or make everything worse? "DeAndre," I said carefully, "there's something else, something Kendra doesn't fully know." I told him about the adoption, about how we'd never formalized it legally because we couldn't afford it back then, and the birth mother had signed over custody through the church. I told him about Rochelle, about the medical records she'd sent. DeAndre's expression grew serious. "Does Kendra know she's not legally adopted?" "She knows we're not her biological parents. We told her when she was young, but I don't think she realizes there's no legal paperwork. She's always used our last name. We claimed her on taxes. She's on Leonard's insurance. For all practical purposes, she's our daughter." "But legally," DeAndre said slowly, "if there's no formal adoption, no legal parent-child relationship established, then she might not have automatic inheritance rights," I finished. "I know. Leonard and I discussed it years ago. That's why the will specifically names her as our heir, to make sure there's no question. So even without legal adoption, the will covers it." "Yes. But, DeAndre," I took a breath. "What if I wanted to change the will?" He studied me for a long moment. "That's your right, Mrs. Thornton. It's your estate. You can leave it to anyone you choose." "I'm not trying to cut her off completely," I said quickly. "I'm not that kind of mother. But I'm thinking, what if I made her earn it? What if I put conditions on her inheritance? What kind of conditions? The idea had been forming in my mind all night. What if she had to work for the company? Really work, I mean. Start at the bottom like Leonard and I did. Learn every part of the business from the ground up. Prove she understands what it takes to build something, not just inherit it. DeAndre nodded slowly. That's called an incentive trust. You can absolutely structure your will that way. How long are you thinking? 5 years, I said. The number felt right. 5 years working for the company in positions I assign. If she does that, proves she's serious, then she inherits everything. If she refuses or quits, then what? I thought about it. Then the company gets dissolved. The assets get sold and the money goes to charity. The community center Leonard was building, scholarships for kids in the neighborhood, something that helps people who actually need it. That's a powerful statement, DeAndre said. But Mrs. Thornton, are you sure? This will cause a major rift. The rift's already there, I said quietly. I just didn't want to see it. My daughter threatened to have me declared incompetent 6 days after her father's funeral. She's keeping my grandbabies from me. If there's any chance to save our relationship, it's by teaching her what her father and I tried to teach her all along, that nothing worth having comes easy. Before we continue, if this story resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our next story. DeAndre started taking notes. I'll draft the new will today, but I need to warn you, when Kendra finds out about this, she's going to escalate. Are you prepared for that? I wasn't sure I was prepared, but I was committed. Do it. We spent another hour going over details. By the time I left DeAndre's office, I had a plan and a timeline. The new will would be ready in 3 days. Until then, I needed to keep Kendra and Terrence at bay. I should have known they wouldn't wait. I got back to the house around noon and found Terrence's car in my driveway. My heart started pounding. How did they get in? I rushed to the front door and found it unlocked. Inside, I could hear voices, Kendra and Terrence, talking in the living room like they owned the place. What are you doing in my house? I demanded, walking in. Kendra barely looked up from where she was going through the desk in the corner. We still have our key, Mama. Remember? You gave it to us for emergencies. This isn't an emergency. This is breaking and entering. Don't be dramatic. Terrence was in Leonard's recliner, looking through a photo album like he had all the time in the world. We're family. We came to talk sense into you. Get out, now. Or I'm calling the police. The police? Kendra laughed, but there was no humor in it. You'd really call the police on your own daughter? On your grandbaby's parents? Where are Aaliyah and Zion? I asked again. Safe. Away from this mess. Kendra finally stood up, and I saw she had papers in her hand. My personal papers from the desk. Bills, bank statements, things that were none of her business. Did you know you missed a payment on the house insurance, Mama? See, this is what we're talking about. You're not keeping up with things. You need help. My blood ran cold. I hadn't missed that payment. It wasn't due for another week. She was lying, manufacturing evidence of my incompetence. Those are private documents, I said, reaching for them. Give them back. Kendra held them away. We're trying to help you. Why can't you see that? Help? You broke into my house and went through my private papers. That's not help. That's... It's what? Terrence stood up, and suddenly his size felt threatening. He was a big man, and he moved closer to me, not touching me but close enough that I had to step back. What are you going to do about it, Ma? Call your lawyer? We have lawyers too. Better ones. DeAndre Winters is the best attorney in the city, I shot back. Terrence's expression flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. He knew who DeAndre was. Everyone did. And he hadn't expected me to move that fast. So, you are trying to fight us, Kendra said quietly. Her voice had that cold edge again. After everything we've done for you. All the Sundays we came to dinner, all the times we included you in our lives. This is how you repay us? The manipulation was so blatant it almost made me laugh. Except there was nothing funny about watching my daughter twist reality, making herself the victim when she was the one doing wrong. I want you both to leave, I said firmly. Right now. And I want my key back. You're making a terrible mistake, Terrence said. But he was moving toward the door, and Kendra followed. At least they weren't stupid enough to push this to actual assault. Kendra paused at the door. We gave you a chance. We tried to do this nicely, but since you want to be stubborn, fine. We'll do it the hard way. She dropped the key on the hall table. At least she gave that back. And Mama, you should know. We went by the company office this morning too, talked to some of the employees, told them there might be some changes coming. Some of them seemed pretty interested in those changes. My stomach dropped. You're trying to turn my employees against me? We're trying to save a company from going under because its owner is too proud to admit she's in over her head, Terrence said. Some of the crew understood that, especially when we mentioned there might be raises and better benefits under new management. After they left, I locked the door and immediately started changing the locks. I called a locksmith and paid extra for same-day service. Then I called the office. My operations manager, Dwayne, answered. Mrs. Thornton? How you holding up? I need to know what happened this morning. Kendra and Terrence came by? There was a pause. Yes, ma'am. They talked to some folks, said they were going to be taking over operations. Asked who might be interested in management positions in the new structure. And what did people say? Mrs. Thornton. Dwayne's voice was pained. Most folks shut them down. We know you. We loved Mr. Leonard. We're not going anywhere. But some people listened. 3 guys. Younger ones who haven't been with us long. They don't remember the early days. Don't know what you and Mr. Leonard built. They just heard raises and promotions and their ears perked up. I closed my eyes. This was worse than I thought. Kendra and Terrence weren't just coming after me legally. They were trying to dismantle my support system, turn my own employees into weapons. Schedule a company meeting for tomorrow morning, I said. All staff. I need to address everyone directly. Yes, ma'am. And Mrs. Thornton, for what it's worth, most of us are with you. We know what's really happening here. After we hung up, I sat in Leonard's chair, the one Terrence had been sitting in like he owned it, and let myself feel the full weight of what was happening. My daughter was trying to destroy me. There was no other word for it. I pulled out my phone and did something I'd been putting off. I called Rochelle. She answered on the 3rd ring. Clarice, is everything okay? Hearing her voice, soft, concerned, familiar after all these years, nearly broke me. No, I admitted. Nothing's okay. I told her everything. The funeral, Kendra's demands, the threats, the break-in today. Rochelle listened quietly, and when I finished, she was silent for a long moment. I'm so sorry, she finally said. About Leonard. About all of this. What can I do? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe nothing. But Rochelle, I'm thinking it might be time. Time to tell Kendra the whole truth. Not just that she's adopted, but about you. About where she came from. About the fact that the adoption was never legal. Are you sure? Rochelle's voice was careful. That's a lot to process, especially now when emotions are high. I know, but I'm changing my will. I'm going to make her work for her inheritance, prove she understands the value of what we built. And if I'm doing that, she deserves to know everything. The full truth. When? Soon. Maybe at the company meeting tomorrow. In front of everyone, so she can't twist my words later, can't claim I'm being manipulative in private. The plan was forming as I spoke. I'll tell the whole company what's happening. I'll tell Kendra what she needs to do to earn her inheritance, and I'll tell her the truth about her birth. That's brave, Rochelle said quietly. And terrifying. I'm terrified, I admitted. But I'm also angry. And tired. Tired of being treated like I'm helpless. Like I'm nothing without Leonard. I built this company too. I have value too. And it's time everyone remembered that. That night, I barely slept again. I kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd say it. I imagined Kendra's reaction, Terrence's anger, the shock on my employees' faces. But I also imagined Leonard, standing beside me the way he always had, and I heard his voice in my head, clear as day. "You got this, baby. You've always been stronger than you knew." The next morning, I put on my best suit, the navy one I'd worn to important contract negotiations. I did my hair and makeup. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw not a grieving widow, but a woman who'd built an empire, a woman who wouldn't go down without a fight. I got to the office at 8. The meeting was at 9. Dwayne had gathered everyone in the main conference room, about 40 employees, from senior managers to newest hires. Kendra and Terrence showed up at 8:50, looking smug. They thought I was going to announce my retirement, hand over control. I could see it in their faces. They had no idea what was coming. At 9 sharp, I walked to the front of the room. Every eye was on me. I saw loyalty in some faces, curiosity in others, and in 3 young men in the back, the ones who'd listened to Terrence's promises, I saw greed. "Thank you all for coming," I began. My voice was steady, strong. "I know the last week has been difficult. We lost our founder, my husband, a man many of you considered a friend. Leonard built this company on principles of hard work, integrity, and family. Today, I'm here to make sure those principles survive." I saw Kendra shift in her seat. She was starting to realize this wasn't going the way she'd planned. "Some of you have heard rumors that I'm stepping down, that there's going to be new management. I want to address those rumors directly." I looked right at Kendra and Terrence. I am not stepping down. I am not handing over control. Thornton & Sons Construction will remain under my leadership. Terrence started to stand, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. I also want to address a more personal matter because it affects this company's future." I took a breath. This was it. The moment everything changed. My daughter Kendra came to me days after her father's funeral demanding that I sign over the company. When I refused, she threatened to have me declared incompetent. She and her husband broke into my home, went through my private papers, and tried to turn my employees against me. Gasps around the room. Kendra's face went red. "That's not—" "It's completely true, and I have documentation to prove it," I cut her off. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm changing my will. Kendra, if you want to inherit this company, you're going to earn it. You'll work here for 5 years, starting from an entry-level position, learning every aspect of the business. At the end of those 5 years, if you've proven yourself, the company is yours. If you refuse or quit, the business will be dissolved and the assets will go to charity." The room erupted. Kendra was on her feet, shouting. Terrence was shouting. Other people were talking over each other. But I wasn't done. "There's one more thing Kendra needs to know," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. "Something I should have made clearer years ago." Kendra froze. Something in my tone must have warned her. "You know you're adopted, baby. We told you that when you were small. But what you don't know is that the adoption was never finalized legally. Your birth mother signed over custody through our church, but we never filed official papers. In the eyes of the law, you're not legally my daughter." The silence was deafening. Kendra's face went white. "What?" "You're still my daughter in every way that matters," I said. And I meant it. I raised you, loved you, provided for you. But legally, you have no automatic claim to Leonard's estate. The only reason you're an heir is because we specifically named you in our will. And that will can be changed. Is being changed. "You're lying," Kendra whispered. But I could see she knew I wasn't. "Your birth mother's name is Rochelle Gaines. She's a social worker in Virginia. She's been in touch over the years, and she'd like to meet you if you're interested. But that's your choice." Kendra grabbed her purse and ran out. Terrence followed, but not before stopping at the door. "You'll regret this," he snarled at me. "I promise you that." The door slammed behind them. I stood there shaking as 40 pairs of eyes stared at me. Then Dwayne started clapping. Slowly, others joined in. Not everyone. Those 3 young men in back slipped out quietly. But most of them. "All right," I said when the applause died down. "Let's get back to work. We have a community center to finish." As the room emptied, I allowed myself to feel the weight of what I'd just done. I'd declared war on my own daughter in front of witnesses. I'd revealed family secrets. I'd burned bridges that might never be rebuilt. But I'd also drawn a line. And I'd stood my ground. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You're going to pay for humiliating us." I stared at it, my brief moment of triumph evaporating. Because Terrence was right about one thing. This was far from over. The lawsuit came 3 days later. DeAndre called me at 6 in the morning. "They filed," he said without preamble. "Petition for incompetency, petition to freeze the company's assets, and a motion for emergency grandparent visitation denial. They're throwing everything at the wall." I was already up, hadn't been sleeping much anyway. "When's the hearing?" "Judge scheduled it for next week. Fast-tracked it because of the business assets involved. Mrs. Thornton, they're serious. They've got a lawyer from one of those big firms downtown." "We're serious too," I said. "What do we need?" "Medical evaluation showing you're competent, character witnesses, financial records proving you're managing the business successfully. And we need to document their harassment." Over the next week, I barely had time to breathe. I went to 3 different doctors who all confirmed what I already knew. I was healthy, sharp, fully capable of managing my own affairs. I gathered financial records showing that the company was thriving, that contracts were being fulfilled, that clients were happy. And I documented everything Kendra and Terrence had done. The break-in, the threats, the attempt to poach my employees. DeAndre even got security footage from the office building showing them going through files they had no authorization to access. But the hardest part was not seeing my grandbabies. Aaliyah called me once, crying, asking why Mama said she couldn't visit anymore. I had to tell her it was complicated, that grown-ups were having disagreements, but that I loved her and Zion more than anything. "Papa would want us all to be together," she said through her tears. She was right. Leonard would have hated all of this. The night before the hearing, I couldn't eat. I sat in the kitchen, staring at photos of better times. Kendra as a baby, her first day of school, her wedding day when she'd told me I was the best mother in the world. Where had that girl gone? My doorbell rang at 8 o'clock. I wasn't expecting anyone and my heart jumped, wondering if it was Kendra and Terrence coming to intimidate me again. I'd had the locks changed, but still. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman about my age, black, stylishly dressed, with kind eyes. It took me a second to recognize her from the photos she'd sent over the years. "Rochelle." I opened the door. "You came." "DeAndre called me," she said. "Told me what was happening. I got on a plane this morning." She held up a small bag. "I hope it's okay that I showed up unannounced." I started crying and pulled her into a hug. This woman I barely knew, who'd given me the greatest gift of my life, had dropped everything to support me. We stayed up half the night talking. She told me about her life, the daughter she'd raised after getting married at 25, the son who was in medical school, her husband who'd passed 2 years ago from cancer. "So you understand," I said. "The grief." "I do. And I understand something else too." She took my hand. "I understand loving a child with everything you have and watching them hurt you anyway. My son, the one in medical school, he didn't speak to me for 3 years because I wouldn't pay for his girlfriend's car. His girlfriend, mind you. Not even his wife." "What happened?" "He grew up," Rochelle said. "Failed out of school, lost the girlfriend, hit rock bottom. Then he called me crying, apologizing. I helped him get back on his feet, and now we're closer than ever. Sometimes people have to fall before they learn to appreciate solid ground. You think Kendra will come around? I think she's scared, Rochelle said. Scared of losing control, scared of not being enough, scared of the truth about where she came from. Fear makes people do terrible things. The next morning, Rochelle came to court with me. So did Dwayne and 5 other employees from the company, all there to testify on my behalf. DeAndre met us on the courthouse steps, looking confident in his sharp suit. "We've got this," he assured me. "Their case is weak. But be prepared. They're going to try to rattle you. Don't let them." Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. Not like TV, just a regular room with a judge's bench and tables for the lawyers. Kendra and Terrence were already there with their attorney, a white man in an expensive suit who looked like he charged by the minute. Kendra wouldn't meet my eyes. The judge was a black woman in her 50s, Judge Harriet Freeman. I'd read about her. She'd grown up in our neighborhood, worked her way through law school, had a reputation for being fair but tough. "This is a petition for declaration of incompetency and emergency asset protection," she began. "Mr. Sullivan, you're representing the petitioners?" Kendra's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We're asking the court to appoint a guardian for Mrs. Clarice Thornton and freeze the assets of Thornton and Sons Construction pending that determination. Mrs. Thornton is 61 years old, recently widowed, and showing clear signs of diminished capacity." "What signs?" Judge Freeman asked sharply. "She's made erratic business decisions, missed bill payments, become paranoid and hostile toward family members trying to help her, and revealed private family information in a public setting in what can only be described as an emotional breakdown." I felt my face get hot, but DeAndre touched my arm. "Stay calm." "Your Honor," DeAndre stood. "We have medical evaluations from 3 independent physicians, all confirming Mrs. Thornton is in excellent mental and physical health. We have financial records showing the business is thriving under her management, and we have documentation showing that the petitioners are the ones who've been erratic, breaking into her home, harassing employees, making threats. This isn't about incompetency. This is about greed." "Those are serious allegations, Mr. Winters," the judge said. "I have evidence, Your Honor." The hearing lasted 4 hours. Kendra's lawyer brought in a psychiatrist who'd never met me but testified that sudden stress could cause cognitive decline in elderly people. DeAndre countered with my actual doctors who'd examined me and found me sharp as a tack. They claimed I'd missed house payments. DeAndre showed my bank records proving every bill was current and had been paid on time. They said I'd alienated loyal employees. Dwayne and the others testified that morale had never been better, that we were on track to finish the community center ahead of schedule. Then it was my turn to testify. Kendra's lawyer came at me hard. "Mrs. Thornton, isn't it true that you've never run this company alone? That your husband made all the major decisions?" "No, that's not true. We made decisions together. I handled contract negotiations, client relations, financial planning. But you never went to college, correct?" "I took business courses at the community college, and I have 40 years of experience, which is worth more than any degree." "Isn't it true that you're so distraught over your husband's death that you've been having paranoid delusions about your own daughter?" Before we continue, please tell us where you're watching from so we know how far our stories reach, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. I looked at Kendra then, really looked at her. She was staring at the table, her jaw tight, and I saw tears on her cheeks. "I'm not having delusions," I said quietly. "I'm heartbroken. My husband died, and before I could even process that grief, my daughter demanded I hand over everything we'd built. She threatened me, violated my privacy, and kept my grandbabies from me. That's not paranoia, that's fact." "Your Honor," DeAndre said, "may I present Exhibit 12? It was the security footage from my house, the camera I'd had installed after the break-in. It showed Kendra and Terrence letting themselves in, going through my desk, taking papers. The timestamp was clear. 2 days after Leonard's funeral. Kendra's face went pale. Terrence whispered something harsh to their lawyer. Then DeAndre called Rochelle to the stand. "Miss Gaines, can you explain your relationship to the respondent?" "I'm Kendra's birth mother," Rochelle said clearly. "Clarice and Leonard took my baby when I was 16 and couldn't care for her. They gave her a beautiful life. We've stayed in touch over the years, and I've always been grateful." "And were you aware that the adoption was never legally finalized?" "Yes. It was supposed to be temporary custody through the church until they could afford the legal fees. But life happened. They loved her so completely that paperwork seemed unnecessary. Until now." "And you support Mrs. Thornton in this matter?" "Completely. Clarice is one of the strongest, most capable women I've ever known. If anyone's equipped to run that company, it's her." After Rochelle stepped down, the judge called a recess. We waited in the hallway for 90 minutes while she reviewed everything. Rochelle sat with me, holding my hand. "Whatever happens, you did the right thing," she said. When we were called back in, Judge Freeman looked stern. "I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony," she began, "and I'm frankly appalled. Mrs. Thornton, I find absolutely no evidence of incompetency. You are clearly a capable businesswoman who's managed significant assets successfully for decades. The medical evidence supports this. The business records support this. The testimony supports this." Relief flooded through me. "However," the judge continued, turning to Kendra and Terrence, "I do find evidence of elder exploitation, harassment, and what appears to be an attempt to fraudulently seize assets. Ms. Thornton Walker, Mr. Walker, you should be ashamed of yourselves." Kendra was crying openly now. Terrence looked furious. "The petition for incompetency is denied. The motion to freeze assets is denied. Furthermore, I'm granting Mrs. Thornton a restraining order. You are to have no contact with her except through attorneys until further notice. As for the grandchildren," she paused, "I'm ordering a temporary custody evaluation. If you've been using those children as pawns in this dispute, there will be consequences." "Your Honor, please," Kendra started. "We're done here. Mrs. Thornton, you're free to manage your affairs as you see fit. Court is adjourned." The gavel came down. I couldn't move for a moment. It was over. I'd won. DeAndre was grinning, shaking my hand. My employees were congratulating me. Rochelle pulled me into a hug, but I was watching Kendra, who sat at the other table sobbing while Terrence yelled at their lawyer, and despite everything, my heart broke for her. I walked over slowly. Terrence saw me coming and stood up like he was going to start something. But the bailiff moved closer and he backed down. "Kendra?" I said softly. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Terrence said we needed to be smart, that you'd run the company into the ground without Daddy, that we had to act fast. And I was so scared of losing everything, of not being enough, and I just... You listened to the wrong voice," I said. "And it cost you." I know I messed up. Is there any way... Can we fix this?" I thought about it. About Leonard. About what he would want. About Aaliyah and Zion, who needed their grandmother and their mother to find peace. "The offer still stands," I said. 5 years. Work for the company. Learn it from the ground up. Prove you understand what it means to build something. Do that. And we can talk about fixing things. And if I can't? If Terrence won't let me?" I glanced at Terrence, who was watching us with barely concealed rage. "Baby, that's a choice you have to make. Your husband or your family, your inheritance or your integrity. I can't make it for you." Kendra wiped her eyes. "Can I see Rochelle, my birth mother?" I smiled. "She's right here. She came all the way from Virginia for you." I stepped aside and let Rochelle approach. The two of them stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, and then Kendra broke down and Rochelle gathered her up like she was still that tiny baby we'd all loved. "It's okay," Rochelle murmured. "It's going to be okay. You just have to decide who you want to be." Over the next few months, things slowly changed. Kendra left Terrence, moved out, filed for divorce, got herself a small apartment. It wasn't easy for her. He fought her on everything, tried to get custody of the kids, made threats. But she stood firm, and DeAndre helped her with a lawyer who got her a good settlement. She took me up on my offer, started working at Thornton & Sons in the administrative office, filing papers, learning the basics. She was terrible at first, showed up late, complained about the work, acted entitled, but slowly she started to understand. Started to see what Leonard and I had built, how much work it took, how every contract and every relationship mattered. I got my grandbabies back. Aaliyah and Zion spent every weekend with me, and we talked about their papa, kept his memory alive. I took them to the community center once it was finished, the Leonard Thornton Community Center, with his photo in the lobby and a plaque that read, "Built on faith, family, and hard work." Rochelle and I became close friends. She visited often, got to know Kendra as an adult, built a relationship with her biological daughter. It was beautiful to watch. One Sunday, about 8 months after the court hearing, we all went to church together. Me, Rochelle, Kendra, Aaliyah, and Zion. The same church where Leonard and I had met all those years ago, where we'd first held baby Kendra, where we'd celebrated and mourned and grown. After service, as we stood in the parking lot talking, Kendra turned to me. "Mama, I've been thinking about what you said in court, about learning what it means to build something. I want to do more than just work in the office. I want to learn the construction side, the actual building. It's hard work, baby, physical, dirty. I know, but Papa did it. You did it in your own way. I want to understand what you sacrificed to give me the life I had. I want to earn it." I felt tears in my eyes. "Your daddy would be so proud." "I hope so. I hope someday I can make up for what I did to you." "You're making up for it now," I said, pulling her into a hug. "Every day you choose to be better, you're making up for it." That night, I sat in Leonard's chair in the office, my chair now, truly mine, and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Terrence was probably still plotting, still angry. Those 3 employees who'd betrayed me had left the company and started their own business, which was already failing. There were still problems to solve, still battles to fight. But I had my family back. Or at least we were on the road to having each other back. I had my company, my legacy, my dignity. I had grandbabies who loved me and a daughter who was finally learning what really mattered. And I had Leonard's memory, his love, his voice in my head telling me I was strong enough. I'd been tested, I'd been betrayed, I'd been pushed to the edge, but I'd stood my ground. I'd fought back. I'd won. Not because I destroyed my enemies, but because I held on to my principles. Not because I was cruel, but because I knew my worth. Leonard used to say that the strongest foundations are built on solid ground, not shortcuts, not quick fixes, just honest work and steady hands. I'd built my life on that foundation, and nothing, not grief, not greed, not betrayal, could shake it. The phone rang. It was Aaliyah calling to say goodnight, to tell me she loved me. "I love you too, baby," I said. "Forever and always." After we hung up, I turned off the office lights and headed home. Tomorrow, there would be more work to do. More of the business to run, more of Kendra to teach, more of life to live. But tonight, I could rest. Because I'd earned it. Thank you for staying with us through this journey. Please subscribe for more stories and drop a comment. We read every single one.